Hey Dakota, do you want to talk to me for the next 10 minutes about Calvin and Hobbes and various other comic strips?
No, I really do not, Peter. Kind of work on stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I guess I'm by myself then. My name is Peter Munden, and I'm a cartoonist. I don't mean that in a professional sense, it's more like a condition. Since I was very young, I've liked comics. That interest has taken many different forms over the course of my life, and will likely take on many more in the future. I've cycled through being a consumer and creator many times over. More recently, I've been a consumer, creator, archivist, and even an evangelist for the medium. I've been making my own comic strip, Eating Worms, for over 3 years. I'm currently in the process of archiving the original comic series from the 15th Street News over the years. As part of that, I published an interview with Aaron Mitchell Waltman, the creator of Rose-Colored Glasses, which was one such original comic series from the 15th Street News. Additionally, I work for the 15th Street News as managing editor, lead cartoonist, and comics editor. I'm also in the process of forming a cartooning club at Rose State College. My goal is to become a professional cartoonist. So those are some of the reasons why cartooning is relevant to me, but I want to talk about some of the interesting history behind newspaper comic strips and how things have changed in the field of cartooning over the last century and a quarter. Visual storytelling is one of the oldest methods of storytelling in human history, but the origin of the comic strip is comparatively very recent. As printed photography became viable and widespread within the newspaper industry in the mid-1800s, illustrators faced waning demand for their skill. Eventually, illustrative skills would become relevant again with the introduction of the comic strip. The Yellow Kid is widely regarded as the first comic strip, and it didn't begin until 1895. In the early days, comics were marketed to uneducated people. Newspapers wanted a way to profit from the low-skilled working class at the time. As a result, many old comic strips would spell out words phonetically and would avoid complicated language. You can actually still see remnants of this in the fact that comics, to this day, usually use pretty basic punctuation. Among the early comics of note, Krazy is cited as an example of comic strips truly becoming an art form. The strip's author, George Harriman, took full advantage of the medium to play around with the lack of restraints of a comic strip. His often barren landscapes and hauntingly abstract worlds are captivating in much the same way as the works of Dr. Seuss, which came decades later. On top of that, the comedy holds up. Krazy's thoughtful yet rambling and confused monologues, punctuated by Ignatz's mouse slinging a brick at the back of his head, will never not be funny. The layout of Krazy Kat was always experimental. In the early days, a Sunday comic strip was given a whole page. This would not be the case forever. Over the decades, newspapers shifted to reducing the size of comics in order to fit more of them into less space. This necessitated standardized and modular layouts. Additionally, in nearly a century of existence, cartoonists were still incredibly undervalued. Artists were rarely given any say in how their strips were merchandised, nor did they have ownership of their own intellectual property. If an artist couldn't maintain their end of the agreement, they could be replaced by someone else who would continue their strip, leaving the author with nothing. These issues were largely accepted within the industry. Bill Watterson was one of the first cartoonists to successfully push back against these restraints. Thanks to his efforts, cartoonists are now given equal control over their intellectual property with syndicates. Additionally, if a cartoonist leaves a syndicate, they take their intellectual property with them. There's a recent high-profile example of this, with Andrews McMeel Publishing dropping Dilbert after the creator, Scott Adams, made controversial statements on a live stream. As uncomfortable of an example as this is, Scott Adams retains ownership of the Dilbert brand, which definitely would not have been the case prior to Bill Watterson's efforts. The legacy comic strip industry is attempting to adapt to an increasingly digital age. Many young cartoonists now go straight to the internet with their work. The future of comic strips is clearly online, but it's unclear if a successful universal platform will ever be viable. Online cartoonists are basically left to forge their own path through constructing a website and social media presence. In order to make a living online, you have to run ads, merchandise, or receive donations from readers, often all three. The simplicity of being syndicated for a living may become a thing of the past, but the ability to grow an audience as a cartoonist has never been more accessible. comics will always have a place as a creative outlet and as an accessible form of entertainment. As for my own comic, I've been focused on my work in the newsroom lately. Comics beyond what I need for each comic page are basically just a hobby right now. I'm also wrapping up a complete archive of the Rose State comics, and I'm working on forming a cartooning club here at Rose State. My comics are fairly traditionally made. I enjoy the physical process of pencil, pens, paper, erasing, whiteout, and despair at the mistakes that inevitably crop up. In fact, why don't I give you a quick overview of some of the elements of my process? Alright, since I have nothing better to do, and by that I mean the only other thing I have to do is my actual job, I'm going to walk you guys through my own cartooning process. I always take a notebook with me everywhere I go, just to write down ideas. I could use my phone, but I just, especially for comics, prefer to just use pen and paper. So I'll just kind of show you. Whoop, nothing to see there. Anyways, so this here is a series of drawings from this little notebook, and this is where the comics usually start, in these crude little drawings with text. This is what I use to kind of plan my layouts and such. In this case, I'm working on a 72 panel script, so I guess I'll move on now. So this is the pencil I always use. It's just a Zebra 0.5 millimeter pencil, I think. So this is being inked with an erasable pen, and the reason is I'm up against a deadline and I need this done quickly. So normally the line work isn't as nice with the erasable pen as what I would normally use. So what I would normally use is this. It's got like sort of a felt tip. So if you push more, like apply more pressure, you get a thicker line. Less pressure is a thinner line. So you can get really nice lines with that. Then I also have this. It's a white gel pen. I basically use that like whiteout. This is a micron pen. I use this for fine detail and lettering because it's very precise. This is printed on a sheet of paper. Sometimes I will draw my panels on a sheet of paper. You know, this way I can work wherever I'm at because this will fit in my pocket. I can also carry these templates with me for panels so I don't have to like measure them out each time. The steps after this, I would scan that in. I would bring it into, usually I use GIMP, that's the image manipulation software I tend to use to finalize these. If they don't need much touching up, then I might use Microsoft Paint. But, you know, if they need a little bit more adjustment, like maybe they scanned in crooked, I use GIMP. So basically, once they're scanned in, they're just edited, and that's where the final version comes from. So I want them to look clean. I still want them to look hand-drawn, so I don't want them perfectly clean, but I just want them to look like they're well presented. And I think that's about all I want to say about it for now. But as always, I've got big plans and a lackluster work ethic, so who knows what I'll do. And I'll see you whenever I see you again.